We're live. Awesome. We can start. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to our CAN panel. I'm very excited. So let me just explain a little bit about who we are. We are the Chief Architect Network, which is a global partnership of chief architect executives across the Fortune 500. We have about 530 members globally now. And I'm really excited to have a couple of my colleagues with me on the call today. What we're going to do is introduce each other and then talk a little bit about our current focus areas in architecture. But the real thing we want to do is spend time with each of you and kind of understand what your questions are, what your thoughts are, right? So like it's kind of like an ask the experts panel where we really want to play off what you might be interested in. So a little bit more about the group. So it's a 501c3 nonprofit. If you happen to lead an architecture practice, just go to chiefarchitectnetwork.com and you can apply to join us. And one other fun thing I'll share towards the end is we're going to be doing a live stream in partnership with Switch On at our upcoming event, September 25th in Dallas. So it'll be 11:30 Eastern time, but also 4:30 p.m. BST, about 45 minutes there. So let's go ahead quickly walk through intros. Maybe I'll just kind of go in the order your folks are showing up on my screen. Mushtaq, would you share first a little bit about yourself and your background, and then what's currently like your focus in architecture? What are you excited about these days?
Cool. Hello, everyone. This is Mushtaq, and I'm part of CANT covering from the Middle East, Saudi Arabia. I've been in Saudi Arabia for like 12 years, working through starting my ground from technology to the architecture, enterprise architecture. Now I'm serving as a digital transformation advisor for the different government entities over here. So what's my interest? What's I'm into is like bringing pragmatic reality to the technology. I bridge the gap of technology theory to implementation. That's execution. That makes me excited, and that's also always made me to be part of CAN, because that's actually you get to be part of the CAN and different events where you connect the brains and then we bring reality. So my current focus is on mostly how the technology and the emerging technologies we bring reality and being pragmatic reality and execution into the digital world.
Awesome. Adi, you're up next on my screen. Why don't you share a little intro?
Hi, I'm Aditya Kaushal, go by Addy, ex Walgreens, Cisco, Sony, worked in multiple industries. Currently, I am in Ecolab. I have the pleasure of working with Grant. I support the commercial side from an enterprise architecture perspective. I'm really passionate about edge computing and AI, and that's my focus as of now. Back to you, Grant.
All right, Jason, take us home.
Sure. Jason Libasci. I like Aditya, what he said. I'm an ex-Accenture, ex-JP Morgan. I'm currently at Bank of America doing enterprise architecture. I'm very passionate about, the Chief Architect Network, the importance of gaining skills from people outside of your organization and what's going on from an architecture perspective. And currently the disruption that AI is putting on organizations and your ability to handle, vendors going out of business or one vendor, being much more, important to invest in the future than other vendors. So I think there's a huge opportunity for enterprise architecture from that perspective.
Awesome. So just on a last idle threat, I put our boring questions in the chat. That's where we're going to go if you folks don't have questions. So just go ahead and maybe read those. If you like one, just type a number. Otherwise, if you have one on your own, type your question just there in the chat, and we'll use that to kind of go back and forth. So I'll take the tail end of the intros. My name's Grant Ecker. I'm the chief architect at Ecolab, and I'm a graduate chief architect, you could say, Medtronic, ex-Danaher, ex-Walgreens Boots Alliance, where I played that role. I also helped to develop the architecture practice at Lowe's Home Improvement and grew up at General Mills. Very proud to be a part of this group of architects. And again, I'll put their link here in the chat for those of you that might be interested. You can also follow them on LinkedIn, where it's a great place to see what architect leaders are talking about and where they're presenting. We have a lot of events you can come and see us at. So we'd love to see you at one of those events coming up. So given we don't have a comment yet, or maybe I haven't figured out how to find them, I'll go to the first question, and randomly I'm going to pick on Adi. Adi, how do you balance innovation with legacy system constraints in your architecture decisions?
So, first of all, it's not easy, and it has to be a business driven approach. So, there are significant technical debt challenges which you have to work through, but you also have to unlock the value. One of the things which I am very passionate about is if you're looking to retire that technical debt, you have to set a date. Most organizations struggle in terms of retiring the technical debt. They develop the new solution, but they're not able to move their user base to the new solution. So that's critical that you have to have the leadership support and consensus in the organization that this is the drop dead date as far as the new old applications are concerned. The other piece is you have to ask the tough questions. What's important? What's critical? There has to be a discussion around what's nice to have and which can drop off the list. So it has challenges, but it's doable with the right mindset and working and building consensus. Back to you, man.
Awesome. Well, anyone else want to add on to this one? How do you balance innovation with legacy system constraints in your architecture decisions? What do you think?
Yeah. I agree with you with the point of Adi. The decommissioning or the decommissioning is very important. I've faced in my experience two different scenarios where sometimes in one organization we found out that when you bring in new technology, the big question comes is, does new technology works alone or it has to coexist with legacy so that it can decommission that? I see it depends on the scenario. In my last organization, where we made decision that okay, no, it should not coexist. It will exist standalone. But later we find out that this never ended the legacy application to decommission because there was so dependency and so unknown factor. That's a big question. I mean, the criteria to decide how do we decommission is what is the metrics or the percentage of known factor of the legacy. If you're aware of that legacy 100% from capabilities, services, integrations, and dependencies, then you can take the risk of bringing new technology standalone. But if you're not capable of the known factor is less, then I suggest build a coexistence so that as we coexistence, we realize what are the capabilities and then we slowly transition into new.
Jason, take us home.
Certainly, when I look at the legacy system constraints, I immediately go to your roadmap and defining a target state architecture. I want to say is easy, but if you just went with school book, there's simple answers. But tying that back to the business capability and the current landscape is huge. The challenging part is really putting that roadmap together from the
Mm-hmm.
legacy system to that target state and then understanding the business, right? Because everyone could throw out the top three solutions from an architecture perspective, but it's really that how do you drive from your legacy system to your target state, put a roadmap that works with the organization. So that's how I really look at it, and it's all about that road mapping from the legacy to the target state.
I love that. Actually, I'm going to take a moment. I'm going to share a little bit of Chief Architect Network research with the group. This is what we call the Architecture Innovation Pipeline, and I thought you might enjoy seeing it. So I'll just quickly jump into this. It's a couple slides. So this is the idea. So we talked about balancing innovation and legacy. I just want to talk about innovation for a moment, particularly because we're spending so much time in AI these days. So what we like to talk about is in the network is the architecture leadership zone and the support zone. So as something comes into the organization, new technology, it's kind of in that discover phase. We know very little about it in our organization, and the adoption is unproven. So we got to understand, how does it fit, as Jason talked about, with the capabilities that we're trying to drive forward in our organization. And then we explore it, right? We get some basic knowledge internal, but we really only understand the external adoption of it. So we're summarizing that and trying to figure out, does it fit in the organization? Then it starts to move into the develop phase where we start to have siloed knowledge, and then we have internal adoption. This is where you're piloting. So in this phase, we're kind of really the tip of the spear. This is where a lot of the newest agentic, MCP, a lot of that new tech is happening in small silos in the organization, especially when you look at AI. Then it moves into the support zone of build, where you have dedicated knowledge and expanded adoption, and embed, where it's available and widespread. So AI has things that are all the way into embed. You could really say that RAG is currently in the embed phase. This is something that was developed in partnership with Arshad Mohammed, the chief architect at Hilton, when we were both at Medtronic. And what's really kind of fun about it is everything comes into this funnel, and it's sort of like it's like little balls. Some stay in, some drop out at different points as they move through that cycle. And you have some things that make it all the way to the end, and other things that kind of fall off. Like we really didn't end up doing what we all thought we would with the metaverse or blockchain, right? Those kind of got categorized. Maybe we piloted them and we kind of dumped them. But then some parts of the metaverse ended up being digital twins, and we do a lot with that in our manufacturing spaces, right? So you kind of end up with something that we all know and love, the hype curve, right? So I won't go too far. There's a whole story on this you could look at on YouTube, but just thought it was worth taking a moment and giving you a chance to see some of the things we're doing together as peers in the network. So I have a question for one of my favorite people on this planet, Wendy Keene, and she's saying, hello, Chief Architects. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with us. Would love to hear your thoughts on number 4. What skills or mindsets do you believe will define the next generation of successful architects? Now, Wendy's also a member. So, Wendy, I'm going to challenge you to while we're going, will you type your answer? I'll read it at the end, but I'll let everybody answer first so that we get a chance to hear from you too. Jason, will you take this one first?
Certainly. I thought about this question and I said, what's going to define for the future? And I think it's really about being 2 things. One, being curious, right? You've got to be curious. You've got to see what's out there. And not only curious from a school book perspective, but networking with people such as the Chief Architect Network, where you can kind of reach out to other colleagues and say, hey, what's working in your area? What have you found? Here's what I'm thinking, and being able to brainstorm. So, that kind of combination of the curious networking, having the relationships. And here's another one that could be challenging in the future. I think it's going to require people who've spent time at different organizations. Because I think, being at one organization for a long time, you might not see how other organizations are doing things, and taking that time to learn from multiple organizations could benefit you significantly, because now you're like, hey, I saw what worked really well over here. Now I really understood what worked really well over here. And, now I'm applying it to this third, company or corporation.
I love that. Adi, do you want to take a cut at it?
Sure. I would echo what Jason is saying, that 90% of the problems which you face in an organization are already being solved by somebody. So if you have a network like Chief Architecture Network or your peers in the industry, you can reach out and ask, bounce ideas off, is pretty amazing. So that's for sure. Other thing is that technology is moving at an incredibly fast pace. So the assumption which you have as of today might not be valid. So there has to be a little bit of transparency with your stakeholders that these are the assumptions today, and if we get better data points, your architecture will evolve. We will proactively react to that. Back to you, Grant.
Awesome. Mushtaq, what do you think?
Yeah, I like the word curiosity of Jason. Yeah, being an architect for a long time, you will start feeling that there has been some kind of hesitation from the development team, saying that there's no value from architects with these current technologies, and then there's always a challenge which architects has to face, that what is the value. Always developer says, that the lead developer says that I can do it, I don't need an architect. The curiosity with an experience is something which adds some value. So I would say any architects, and also I like the one point of Jason saying that being pragmatic, not from the books, but giving value from the pragmatic. Books give if you take any framework or any technology or any standards, the books and the reality is quite different. That's a value what architects can give. That's an experience what we as an architects have to have the mindset, saying what is being pragmatic. Saying AI, leveraging AI versus bringing value, considering the current data situation in organization, with an experience of how worth it is to leverage AI at right moment, or fix our data strategy and build an AI strategy. That's something where we don't find in books. That mindset of linking the current business or the organization capability with being pragmatic to being from what the books says. That's actually that mindset will enable architect bring value to the organization. That will actually help architects.
I love that. So Wendy's pasted in. I'm not going to read it yet. In fact, I'm going to do what architects do. Some folks like to talk with their hands. Architects like to type with slides. So I want to just visualize what I heard a lot from this group. I think we need to have curiosity. What you'll notice in this picture, which is in the develop phase of the innovation pipeline, it's not some brilliant architect that knows all the answers to everything AI. We're bringing together people that are in those domains, maybe data analytics, maybe cloud, maybe there's an AI platform that might be leading us. Maybe there's some business folks that are helping us figure out what problems we're solving with curiosity, and asking those folks to engage with curiosity to bring in the experts within their teams. And if we don't have the expert, well, then we bring in someone from the outside, or we get some advice from a colleague, like someone in our network, someone in our like vendor group that can help us. And we put them two in a box with one of the places where we have to build that knowledge. And I think that that's the key, is if architecture has to be the smartest people in the room, then there can only be so many smart people in the company. But if architects are the curious people that drive out all the knowledge across the whole organization and help to ask the questions that help us go, oh, wait, maybe we don't know, maybe we need to get deeper there, or, oh, no, we have the answer, this is why. I think that kind of approach is what's going to make us successful in the future. Now, you all got to read Wendy's question, but I didn't. So I'm really excited to see what she had to say. And then we have a question in the chat, too. Curiosity, networking, application of experience, stakeholder transparency, pragmatism, value-oriented. Yes, big ones for me. Absolute communication mastery and driving the human focus, plus the ability to facilitate intentional and integrated design across an organization. People, process, info, and tech. Like a true business architect. Wendy would go nowhere else. Towards the business outcomes and the strategy. The latter requires fluency in the other disciplines and a close partnership. Nailed it, Wendy. Love it. Oh, that's fun. Okay, so let's scroll up because we got to go first come, first serve. Tristan wrote, as a long-established specialist research organization, innovation is where we live, but it often comes with a vast legacy of technical infrastructure. We build what we can't buy, which makes it difficult to identify every way in which we can deliver technical capabilities. This makes designing target stakes, measuring success, savings, etc., complex. Any thoughts on how to better manage this? Anyone want to pick that up? Good. It's a great question.
I'll start. Those are really important parts, and what I can say is, another key skill set for enterprise architecture is really to define what good looks like, and share what good looks like across the organization. So when you're in a large organization, you're going to have, hundreds, thousands, 10,000 teams out there doing many things. And the more that they have a clear understanding of what good looks like from enterprise architecture, the more they're going to build to it. People, when you kind of show them what good looks like, they tend to actually try and say, hey, yeah, that makes sense. Let me try and move towards that. And in large organizations, you're trying to steer a ship. You're not in a little speedboat, right? It's more about a large cruise ship, and you're trying to move the whole organization, down the ocean. So defining what good looks like, I think, can go a long way with your question.
I like that. Any other to add on?
So if I would pick this up, I have an experience. I mean, I had experience on dealing with a scenario, where we were working on a strategy for DXP digital experience for an organization on the logistics. There was a question: are you going to go and pick the best out of the market and get the DXP platform? Or there was a debate like, okay, no, let's build it. Then there was a discussion within architects, but I said I took it different way. What we built was we built the capex and opex cost, and we built what it's going to give. Then we in a way we converted this into cost wise and the KPIs from capabilities. Then we went to the business and we said that, okay, we'll give you this platform, these features, this capex and this opex. Okay, from the capital investment perspective, of course, from the digital transformation perspective, we'll get the capital invest. But every year you have to spend 2 to 3 million to manage this platform. Do you have a business strategy to get revenue to the organization more than 2 million? Then the business was very straightforward, saying, no, we don't have the strategy to do the cross-selling, because DXP is all about the cross-selling and marketing analytics. Then we said that what is your strategy? They said like we do have one business line, we want to end up on this. Then we said okay, let's go with a with a lesser economical, or we build it only from the marketing analysis. So it's always that's where the architects try to link any technology investment, whether it's terms of people, technology, or time, with the business and organization objective. Then that's where you will get a support. Else we will get isolated. We get technology and we end up that business is not supporting us, or as part of change management, business doesn't want to change. So that's my experience.
Very
And
good.
just to add to that, the way I look at it is build versus buy is a painful conversation to have.
Mhm.
I've had it like in pretty much every organization I've been, and it's not easy. So the approach I tend to take is you need to understand your organization. You need to understand what kind of skill sets they have, what kind of support structures they can build out, and are you really needing to build something. So there might be cheaper options available. Potentially there you might be looking at building something which is really cool and might be fun to tinker with, but does it really help the organization to build it? Those are the tough questions you need to ask, and be pragmatic in terms of the feedback you get and then react to it.
I think that's really powerful. One of the things I would mention with this question is, and it's kind of talked about in the themes that you've just heard, but just kind of a summary way to think about it. So, especially with the speed of innovation we see today, and Adi knows what I'm going to say because you heard me say it yesterday. If it's something that is not differentiating to your company, surf. Just surf the wave. If you like, oh gosh, I really want to build out RAG and all this cool stuff, literally just wait 3 months and it's baked into Microsoft Teams, right? You don't have to actually build it. If it's not differentiating for your company, just surf the wave. But if it's something where it's actually going to drive your company into competitive advantage, then you got to jump off your surfboard and swim, right? Because that you got to beat the rest of the market to actually figure out how to leverage this emerging technology into the use cases that are core to your company. And you aren't going to want to outsource your core competitive advantage to someone else anyway. You're going to want to find your places to differentiate in that technology. And then within your surfing, surf in the platforms that you're already in, right? If you're looking at something inside of the Microsoft ecosystem, why wouldn't you just use Copilot? Why would you put some third party thing to try to integrate with all that? Their stuff's going to be good enough, right? So, especially if it's not differentiating. So that's my high level advice. It kind of touches on some of the things you've heard, but you have to take in mind what your current landscape looks like. And is this going to be something that fits in that, or do you have to make some adjustments? We got a great question that followed on from one of our earlier comments around how do we look at, in business capability mapping, ensuring that the capabilities truly reflect the strategic priorities and not just organizational silos, the hippos, right? Highest paid person's opinion, right? And those kinds of challenges, especially in light of potential transformation based on generative AIs emerging and some of the distraction we all see in that, right? So what criteria do you use to define and scope a capability, and how to avoid overlaps? Wendy, if you respond to this one, I will read that as well. She is literally the thought leader on this, but I will do my best from what I learned from her. And guess what we get to do? We get to go back to my toy. So let's use it. So this was the build phase, which I didn't really explain, which is really about making sure we're building things right. And now we go to the embed phase, which is prioritizing the roadmap. So this is where we have looked at we've gone straight from, and I did a whole Gartner case on this called interconnected business capabilities. We dissect from business strategy to the imperatives to the critical primary capabilities needed to pull that off, and the secondary capabilities that we need to achieve that. Maybe things that aren't quite as fun, like email campaign management or key opinion leader engagement, so that we have in the medical device industry, for example, the right doctors and key opinion leaders talking about that particular product, or even if it's great, no one's going to use it. So you understand those things, and then you take the technology parts, and you also understand your gaps, right? And you build a prioritized roadmap. And this is where you start to overlay those solutions into that alignment. And you can hold this up also like a transparency report, And you might say, I don't know, I'm probably too old. Literally, I can tell you what color the dinosaurs were back when. But you would hold these transparency sheets on top of each other, and that was they would use that to overlay ideas before there was PowerPoint and all this great stuff in our classrooms when I grew up. So what you would look at there was, okay, well, the metaphor is, what if you take what you're spending your money on in terms of the capabilities and overlay it against where you should be spending your money? And if you see a big investment here, maybe we color that red, because that's not aligned to anything in the priorities that we have outlined. So I think having that kind of line of sight back into what we were trying to achieve is really helpful in trying to pull that whole framework together. Okay, great question. Anyone else want to add on to the capability view?
Yeah, from my experience, I've seen when we were, I want to share my funny experience we had when we were building the strategy for the next year. The shared services team came and said that, look, we want investment in your strategy to get a robo dog, which just go into the office and identifies the non-compliant within the organization, like in terms of ways of working, policies, shared services, and they were very keen to prioritize this. So that was a funny question. My point is, if you look from silos, every strategy, every initiative becomes valuable for them. But if you look from the price perspective, link it to the organization strategy. What is the business, the value chain of organization? What are the core services of organization? And what is the KPIs of the core services? What are the support services? That's where, as Grant said, where do I invest on the core or my support services? And even my investment on support services, how do they enable the core services? Eventually, when you have this organization strategy with value chain, then you can build this business capabilities. Then that automatically gives you where should I prioritize.
I love that. Anything else to add? I know this is a passionate area for us. We love to talk about the what before the how.
So, whatever you said, it resonates with me. I think one of the things which I tend to use a pestle framework. You need to understand what's important for your leadership, where they want to take that organization. And sometimes from an architecture perspective, we do get the blinders on. Okay, tech debt is a big deal. It might not be important for the organization. They might want to invest in innovation or growing the business. So it's really critical that you get the sense in terms of what the business wants or where the organization is going.
That's so cool. That's exactly right. I often find in organizations, we can't have one rule book as enterprise architects for everyone to follow. And it used to make me really kind of upset. How come they get to cheat? How come they get different rules? Well, that's digital. And digital has to change at the pace of the consumer. And that other group is the kind of the back office order management. And they've got to really stick to standards so we don't have 17 different ways to manage orders in a company. So in some areas might be a little less strategic, something we just want to do the minimum on to maintain our just operations, but it's not going to be a competitive advantage. So we want to do that function cheaper and cheaper every year, consolidate applications, get to as few things as possible. So we're going to wring all the cost out of this commodity function so we can invest in being a little inefficient to try out 3 different ways to do things in AI and digital and transformation. So I think it's very important that when we're working in architecture, we understand the context of what that business and the overall IT organization is trying to achieve in the different context of their setting, so that we don't give advice that might apply to our supply chain to the customer front end and vice versa. There's a great question on the back of Wendy's question. Should the architect domain in which an architect will be working be taken as the reference on the skills for that role? Wow. My first answer on that one is let's hope not, right? People are so much more interesting than the one job they're doing today. Like if you just talked like Adi, for example, I had no idea. You worked on Redbox, right? Back in the day. I didn't know that. He did all this amazing data work inside of Walgreens when we worked together. And he was so good at it, I would just assume that he's clearly the data guy. Like I wouldn't ask him about, going down to the plant floor and, what we would need to do with different IoT technology. Turns out he's a pro. So I don't know, maybe Adi, if you wouldn't mind taking a first cut at this one, because I certainly learned in my own way. I'm glad I asked the question, didn't go, you wouldn't do that. I just went, hey, what do you think of this? And Adi's like, oh, actually, I did this and this and this and this. whoa. Share what you think, Adi.
So, from an architecture standpoint, I think the role needs to be business aligned and capability aligned. And it has to be somewhat decoupled from a tech stack. So, what does the business need? What's the best solution for it? And how do we upskill around that? So, you have to be curious, you have to be willing. And I think your cup needs to be empty. You need to be able to learn new things and drop them based on the organization needs. If you have a multi-cloud strategy, then you have to explore other hyperscalers. If you are trying to stick and cost contain and stay on premise or reduce certain tooling in the organization, you need to align to that. So there's no good answer to that, but I would recommend that you think in terms of aligning yourself better with the organization.
Great. Mushtaq or
And
Jason?
the one comment I ties to being curious. Sometimes coming into a new domain, you'll ask questions where people that are within that domain have been doing it for such a long time, they haven't thought to ask those questions. So sometimes not having, that deep architecture domain in that area can actually add a significant amount of value, because if you're naturally curious, you're going to ask questions. Well, why are you doing that? Well, it's been done that way for the last 15 years. Maybe there was a requirement to do it that way 15 years ago that's not applicable today. So I think there's an opportunity to work in areas outside of your reference domain and bring a lot of value.
Can I add something? I think this is so important. Like, I believe as architects, we're always trying to get a wider T. You start with depth in your career, then you widen with the T to get on experience of broader and broader domains, from technical architecture to solution architecture to product architecture, right? And then you can maybe move even broader and maybe even less depth business architecture. And then one of my favorite people I met actually a couple years ago, like 10 years ago, but we got closer and closer over the last few years. His name's Jamshed. He presented the pie-shaped people. And I was like, what's this? And it was like, okay, so here's the idea. The other leg that you get when you get further along in your architecture career is business. So we changed the metaphor a bit, and it's technical, business, and communication is what connects us. So I think every opportunity you get to learn a domain you don't know a little bit about and you're interested in, lean into it. Like, get curious, go check that out. See if you can broaden your breadth of awareness, because it'll make you a better architect. All right, I had to jump in with that.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, there's a mix of both vertical alignment on the technology and also the having the horizontal level of growth to make the decisions. So that generally we sometimes lean in an organization. An enterprise architect has spent his whole life on working on a certain technology, whether it's cloud, and all his decisions looks biased. But if you check some technology, some architect who has worked in cloud, but who has expanded in terms of business and also capability wise. So that gives him, though he likes the cloud, but he, as Adi said, sometimes he end up looking from the on-prem. And for the organization, for that situation, staying on-prem, it might be a best solution. So that's a mix, a balance of both is very important. I actually liked what Adi said, the understanding the context, capability, and the business level understanding is very important for an architect.
Love that. We interrupt your scheduled program for a brief advertisement. Totally kidding. Very excited about the Chief Architect Network's partnership with Switch On. And we have an event coming up in Dallas that's the 24th through the 26th of this month. And we are going to partner with them and make a live stream public broadcast available from the event. So about 6 of us are going to come together and broadcast 11:30 Eastern. It's British Standard Time, 4:30 on Thursday p.m. So CST, I think, is 5:30, and it kind of goes a little later, of course, as you go across the globe. But a good opportunity. Most folks might be able to join. It's about the same time as it is right now. And we'd love to have you with us. I think it'll run about 45 minutes. So you heard it first. We're going to be sharing that out on the socials. It'll be a LinkedIn live show, so you can just join on LinkedIn and watch us there. And very excited about our continued partnership with Switch On. It's just an awesome company. What they do is so great for our profession, and it allows us to reach you, which we find is kind of the part of our purpose, is to really and kind of learn from and expand the thinking across our profession. So just a quick little call out there. And as we talk about how great our profession is and how much we love it, Hans puts a question out there that we have to kind of pause and go, oof, ouch, this is true. I've seen a couple cases locally where enterprises hire a new CIO who chooses to downsize EA by 90% or completely dismantle the practice. I've seen it too. We actually have a group in our group called Reset EA, which is about how you go about being in the practice that's either being reset and what do you do to kind of help it kind of come back into health, or if you are reset, what do we do to rebuild if that option comes? And sometimes they don't rebuild; they go without the function. So I kind of see it as the fifth dentist in the Trident commercial. There's always one in five CIOs just doesn't like it. Why don't they like it? I would relate it back to the story we talked about earlier, where if architects are showing up and they've got a checklist of what's right and what's wrong, and the checklist isn't right, like I'm going into supply chain and I'm like, yeah, go try out 16 different ERPs. Why not add another one? Seems fun, right? If we start taking the digital playbook into supply chain, or we take the supply chain playbook and we stop digital from innovating, you can imagine that starts to annoy the CIO. But it doesn't have to be that egregious. We could just not know. We could not know that the rules change. We could not know what the priorities are. That's why it's so important that we spend time with the CIO and that leadership team and make sure that there is a harmonious delivery at the macro. You're always going to disagree on small things. That's important. But when you escalate something and nobody cares that it's a concern, that is your giant cue that you better go find something else people care about. And maybe people can't tell you that's not a popular thing anymore, but they don't want to shut it down because it was somebody's pet project that's just not getting enough political support anymore. That's when your one-on-ones are really helpful to go, are we still doing that? No? Okay. And then you can kind of adjust your playbook. What are you guys seeing in those EA resets? It's a pretty hot topic and a pretty important one in our career path. Maybe let's go to you, Mushtaq. What do you think?
See, I have a funny experience. Again, this is one day in one organization I was working with. I was part of the discussions thing, and one VP of IT said, "Mushtaq, EA is all about drawing boxes, but I found you also have technical experience. Why don't we hire someone just to draw boxes and we focus on delivery?" I said, that's the perspective all the organizations have, because it's not because of the concept of EA. It's because of some organizations hire EA without an experience, where uh, they don't understand the business capability, they don't understand the organization need. What they need to understand is the TOGAF framework, what they understand the Zachman framework, what they understand the standards, and any discussion they just bring this and they say, no, it has to be this way. But sometimes frameworks, standards have to be compromised for the capability context or the business context. That's why CIO or CEO sometimes don't like EA saying everything what EA says. So that's why, again, when I saw the question in the comment, I realized that Adi has already answered when he was saying that EA architecture has to look from the organization benefit capability, and he has to understand what organization needs. What organization needs is what C-level needs. So that compromise is like what we need to bring. That's why whenever we had a discussion on the CAN, I mean, as Grant said, we had a very detailed discussion. How can we reset EA? From my experience, EA, and when I was serving the EA enterprise architecture training, that I faced this big trouble. So when I had to convince the C-level to move the whole enterprise architecture from IT to strategy. That's where I found that EA will get an opportunity to prove their worth. That's where when we work with strategy department, we could we could show the value of EA, not just from technical perspective, from the strategy investments, any digital investments, is it worth or not just from technical perspective, is from capability perspective, from ROI perspective. That's where we could prove that EA is not just some who draw boxes. EA is something who drive the decisions for the C levels, whether it's investment level, business level, or technology level.
There's a great comment I just noticed from Tristan, and I'm like typing to it because I just like it so much, but I'll say it out loud. She mentions, hey, we made some decisions and they're not right now, but they made sense at the time. And I think, boy, is that important, right? It's like GPS maps on Google, right? Like you might have taken a turn and it might have been the wrong turn, or it might have been the right turn at the time. Usually is the right turn at the time. And then you run into a ton of traffic, right? it's not like Google Maps is like, hey, a little alert comes up. You're an idiot. You shouldn't have been on this road. What it does is it says, hey, this is traffic is now here. Do you take the next exit or do you continue through it? Because it's still, even though it's traffic, it's the fastest still way to get to your destination. So I think it's on us to make sure we calibrate, is the destination still right? And if it is, what's the most efficient way to get there with the infrastructure and the decisions we've made to date? There's very little value in going back and going, hey, we did that one wrong. Like, everyone does wrong things, right? I think that's all relative. So I got all excited about that and was typing it in the chat. And then I just thought, hey, I better just respond. It's a good question. So we have one final question here that I think it would be helpful to jump to from Frederick. Can you share some tips, tricks, and experiences on socializing business and enterprise architecture? I'd love that to be our closeout. I think we have 5 minutes. So maybe if everyone just takes 1 minute, give us your tip, trick, experience, etc. on socializing. Adi, I'm going to start with you.
So you've got quite a lot of frameworks, best practices available in the industry. Don't make the mistake of setting them as a frame and working as defining a role as making sure that they are aligned. It's an incentive problem. The way you should look at it as they are there to guide you, but your job is to enable the business. It's not to align to those frameworks. Business needs to move forward, and you need to figure out paths forward together with the business. That's what I would recommend.
All right, Mushtaq, where do you want to take us?
So I would say the a tip or trick which it worked for me honestly. It's like more aligning from technology perspective. You align with 3 departments: business, product team. More if you have a product strategy or a business strategy, the strategy team who actually do the investment, who actually open the wallet, and the business excellence. That's where if you work as a consortium, so you can actually, you don't need to socialize yourself. They socialize your architecture, they promote your practices, and they support you. So that's where I found interesting.
Jason, what do you think?
Yeah, so I think there's, I saw a great presentation actually as part of the CAN network where it was really talking about your audience. Like a developer wants to know how I'm going to leverage this enterprise architecture. So making sure that you have a presentation and ability to communicate for the developers on how, right? Product or business, they want to know, how does this help my customers? How does this help my revenue? Which is another, presentation of your architecture. And your CIOs, they're going to know, how does this help me save money, right? Mm-hmm. So when you are communicating, my tips and tricks are really to have 3 different views of that architecture. Developers are how, business is customers and revenue. CIOs are saves, probably, and security, right? And I think that's really important for communicating that enterprise architecture.
Cool. I will add one more. I think my tip is focus on the person, not the problem. Build relationships that are deep and wide. Be ready to run into bumps together. Always focus on the broader, hey, I disagree with you on this thing, and here's why. But what do we need to do to solve this together? Because this is just one problem in the road. We're going to go to 5 more together. I care way more about that than I do about winning this battle. It doesn't matter. What's the right thing for the business? Let's decide together. And if we can't decide, let's get a boss involved above both of us that can help us divide and figure out what the right thing to do is. But it's never about me. I win and you lose means we both lose, right? It's one of the fastest ways to get yourself to an EA reset is try to win against the other leaders. No, if you think you're winning, you're losing. So make sure that you find the way to win for the company together. So I think that about wraps us. If I'm wrapping at the right time. This is an amazing session. I don't want us to miss the absolutely patented Philip Bell goodbye. It's always great. So we got to get over there in time. Philip, are we on time? We got to jump over to your quick classic end of event. All right. That's it, everyone. Thank you so much for being here with us. And don't miss future Switch On events. Don't also be stuck in your time zone. Like you can get a little bit of switch on Americas. You can get definitely some switch on Asia. Join the parts that make sense. These are amazing events. So hope to see you in the next one and maybe later in September. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.